papers in this course. So for the first semester, I'm supposed to take half, while my colleague Professor Yadu will be taking the remaining half. So because there is no half in human being, so I decided to take group 1 to 18. Again, group 1 to 17 and a half. I'm taking group 1 to 18. My colleague will be taking 19 to 35. All those who fall within 18 to 35 should know that Professor Ade will be contacting them, or they should contact Professor Ade through the class governor to know when it will start, because I'm not enough to base. So that said, I have group 17 listed pending, 18 pending, and group 6 will be taken in areas. So let's have group 17, 18, 16 in that order. And each group takes 5 minutes quickly because I'm about boarding the plane now. Just want to finish done with you guys so that you guys can move on. So group 17, the class governor will take over while I listen. Thank you.
Group 17, please, can you proceed?
And the rule, 5 minutes quickly, not even extending it by 1 minute. You keep taking to 5 minutes to amplify essential points in rest of your paper. Are we objecting somewhere? Thank you very much. So the time now is 5:47. Once it's 5:52, the 17 will stop. And ditto for others.
Group 17, have you started? I can't hear anything. Group 17. Can the next group present, please? Group 18. We can't hear anything. Maybe 17 is not ready. Group 18, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Group 18, yeah.
Please proceed.
Please proceed. Then
Okay.
group 6 will get set, after which I will out the class.
Okay. Good evening, Prof. Good evening, everyone. So thank you. My name is Llm-Pyo, and I'm speaking on my topic. My seminar paper is on Nigeria versus Cameroon, a review of the ICJ decision on Bakassi disputes. And my paper is in 3 parts. Part 1, which is a brief introduction on the overview on the International Court of Justice, and part 2 is overview of the decision of the International Court of Justice on the Nigeria versus Cameroon disputes. And part 3 is review, recommendation, and conclusion. So quickly, let me just delve into the main points of the top of the paper. So I try to give a brief of what the ICJ is all about and the jurisdiction and the laws that they adopt while adjudicating over disputes. And one thing I also did was to create the difference, or to show the difference between the ICJ and the ICC, because most times people use them interchangeably, but they're actually different courts. The ICJ actually hears cases from states as a nation or countries, while the ICC actually hears cases emanating from individuals or crimes that are committed by individuals, such as war crimes, maybe genocide, or in the Rome statutes, in the Rome statute, it was actually listed the matters that the ICC can actually hear. So just to delve into the main points. So I did an overview of the Bakassi and Nigeria dispute, and the main points of dispute was with respect to land boundary, land borders, basically territorial borders. And one thing is sure, that sovereignty or territory actually determines the sovereignty of a country, or a country has sovereignty when they can identify that their territories. And one of the main issues we had from the pre-colonial era was the disputes that arose after the colonial masters left between the boundaries of countries. And Nigeria Bakassi was one of the most highly contested issues in Africa when it comes to boundary disputes. So the court in the ICJ initially it was Cameroon that actually took the matter before the ICJ, and the ICJ had to make a judgment and they created the boundary between Nigeria and Cameroon. And at the end of the day, Cameroon enjoyed the proceeds of the case, and they were given the Bakassi Peninsula. One thing to also note is that yes, parties, when they submit to the jurisdiction of the ICJ, they are actually supposed to be bound, or they are compelled to be bound by the decision of the ICJ. However, implementation becomes an issue, because when an international court makes a decision, they don't have a police force who will come out, or they don't have a force who will come and implement that decision. So what happened along the line was that Nigeria and Cameroon, after the decision of the ICJ, which was made on 10th October 2002, in 2006, both parties came together and signed what is called the Green Tree Agreement. And in this Green Tree Agreement, it was an implementation of the decision of the ICJ. Article 1 of the agreement actually states the main crux of the judgment, which is Nigeria recognizing the sovereignty of Cameroon over Bakassi Peninsula in accordance with the judgment of the ICJ. So to quickly go into I actually have done in the overview of the case, I actually outlined even the processes that were filed between both parties and the timelines, the different scenarios that played out in the proceedings. So quickly on the review of the case, like I mentioned earlier, the Bakassi Peninsula case was one of the most contentious territorial disputes in Africa, and the situation as it was thrown created some fundamental issues, which in consideration, when ICJ was coming into that, making their decision, they failed to look into some critical issues which might have swayed their decision in some sense. So some of the issues that they failed to look at was the right of self-determination. Now, the ICJ's decision primarily focused on colonial era treaties rather than the will of the indigenous people of Bakassi. The provision of self-determination is enshrined in Article 1 of the United Nations Charter, and it underscores the territorial decisions should align with the free and genuine expression of the people. Now, in cases of Eritrea, even the South Sudan case, you realize that there was a referendum that was done for parties to actually determine where they actually wanted to lean to. Was it to remain as Sudan as a whole, or have their own Southern Sudan? We also look at the issues that are happening in Great Britain, where Scotland are actually pushing to have their own country, or to be a country of their own, and subsequently they push for a referendum. So that was one of the things that the ICJ failed to do in resting on or coming to that conclusion. What they relied on was basically treaties that were signed during the colonial era. Now, the legal weight of jus cogens norms. Now, the argument that the jus cogens norms could invalidate treaties like the Green Tree Agreement is significant. While the ICJ's ruling relied on historical treaties, Nigeria could have challenged the ruling on the basis that the self-determination overrides historical agreements. And that's almost similar to what I had mentioned earlier. Then the absence of a plebiscite could have been a strong legal grounds to seek review before the October 10, 2012 deadline. So to also mention, there was a deadline to review the case, but Nigeria failed to do that. So what would have happened was, if they had hinged on the fundamental rights, or the fact that the indigenous people of Bakassi were not given the grounds to actually decide or choose or suggest where they want to rely on, or whether it's Bakassi or Nigeria, that would have been a ground for reviewing the case. Now, another issue that the ICJ failed to hinge on or to look at before coming to that decision is the humanitarian and security crisis. the transition process, when after the implementation of the judgment by the signing of the Green Tree Agreement, the transition process led to suffering of Bakassi residents, many of whom were displaced and faced with citizenship issues in Cameroon. Reports of human rights abuses were there, marginalization was there, security threats persisted. Even, well, maybe till the date, then Nigeria and Cameroon must ensure the fundamental rights of the Bakassi residents, whether they choose to remain in Cameroon or integrate into Nigeria, that they must ensure that they are protected. And that was what the Green Tree Agreement sought to do. So in the sense that first things first, the parts that were petitioned to Nigeria and the parts that were petitioned to Cameroon, they ensured that both parties withdrew their forces, the military forces, from the parts that were not designated to them. So some of the recommendations are actually proposed for the Bakassi Peninsula case, even though it was a bit, because it's almost
hope the class government is monitoring the time, because you've been going on and on and on and on and on.
Yes, sir. He's on his last minute, sir.
Okay, thank you. So one of the recommendations was a revisit of the case through diplomatic and legal channels. Although Nigeria had accepted the ICJ ruling and withdrew from Bakassi, the matter remains unsettled from a human rights and self-determination perspective. The Nigerian government, in collaboration with international bodies, could push for a referendum or other self-determination mechanism similar to what happened in South Sudan. Another one is recommendation was Nigeria's responsibility to its citizens. For what is what, we still have Nigerians who are still within the Bakassi Peninsula, and the Nigerian Constitution mandates the government to protect its citizens' security and welfare. If Bakassi residents overwhelmingly consider themselves Nigerians and face hardship under Cameroon rule, the government has a duty to advocate for their rights. This could involve diplomatic efforts for dual citizenship, economic aid, or reintegration programs for those who wish to return to Nigeria. And on the conclusion, I stated that the Bakassi case is not just about borders, but about people. The failure to conduct a plebiscite before transferring sovereignty raises concerns about the legitimacy of the transition of Nigeria, Cameroon, and the United Nations must acknowledge the unresolved self-determination question and take steps, whether through diplomatic negotiations, legal appeals, or international mediation. And this is to ensure that the people of Bakassi are not treated as mere pawns in a geographical game, but as rightful stakeholders in the determination of their own destiny. So these are some of the recommendations I actually put out and the review of the case. Considering the time, I think I will stop here. Thank you, everyone.
So please go ahead. Let's start group 6 so that we wrap up. Group 6, 5 minutes. You stop at 6:05.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You shouldn't have taken 5 minutes, because that's the backlog. You are presenting in areas you had your plot, you couldn't present, and we're going to deflood you. So keep strictly to 5 minutes so that we can wrap up the class. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Good evening, gentlemen. And my name is Onoteko Tamilola Edward. It is with great honor that I present before you distinguished gentlemen my seminar paper titled From Organization of African Unity, that is OAU, to the African Union, AU. And to also determine whether the AU represents a substantive institutional transformation or merely a superficial rebranding of its predecessor, that is Organization of African Unity. Africa has long grappled with deep-seated challenges, including political instability, economic stagnation, violent conflicts, and governance failures. The OAU was founded in 1963 with lofty ideals of fostering unity, eradicating colonialism, and promoting economic and political cooperation among African nations. However, by the late 90s, its inefficiencies became glaring, necessitating the establishment of the African Union in the year 2001. So the key inquiry before me is whether the AU represents a genuine departure from the limitations of the OAU, or if it is simply an old institution clad in new nomenclature. Hence, the metaphor, old wine in new skin. To achieve this to a certain level, I shall explore the historical context of the OAU, assess its strengths, failures, and of course, examine the motivation behind its transformation, and critically evaluate the effectiveness of the OAU in addressing Africa's governance, economic, and security dilemmas. The introduction, because of the time constraints, is just to get the rationale behind this topic. Africa's political and socio-economic landscape has been shaped by its colonial past, which left a legacy of fragmentation, economic dependency, and political volatility. The Organization of African Unity was established on May 25, 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, as a response to the continent's struggle for decolonization, sovereignty, and cooperation. However, while the OAU achieved its primary goal of decolonization, it failed to evolve into an effective governance structure capable of resolving Africa's most present challenges. Its adherence to absolute state sovereignty and the principle of non-interference resulted in its inability to prevent conflicts, human rights abuses, and authoritarianism across the continent.
I'm sorry to interject you. Your time is up.
Oh.
Yes, your time is up. You spent.
Maybe should I just conclude?
Give her the last thought. 1 minute.
Okay, sir.
Conclusion and recommendations. I will say that the AU has made notable improvements. It still inherits several of the OAU's foundational weaknesses. So to achieve genuine transformation, the following strategic reforms are imperative, which I state as follows. Strengthening institutional enforcement, that is to implement clear sanctions for leaders who violate human rights and democratic norms, and also to bolster the African courts on human and people's right to ensure legal accountability. And secondly, economic self-sufficiency, that is to reduce dependency on Western financial institutions by establishing African-led funding mechanism. And of course, to encourage African corporations to invest in AU-led developmental programs, so to say. And of course, to advance economic integration, that is to fully operationalize some of the policies that are embedded in the AU Charter, so that they can maximize continental trade potential, and of course to enhance infrastructure and transport network in order to facilitate market connectivity.
Wait. When you are supposed to be connecting, you don't react. You are giving 1 minute and you get from. If you have to conclude, you shouldn't.
I'm sorry, sir.
That's not the way it's going. It's going to count against you.
I'm sorry, sir.
Your time.
I'm so sorry, sir.
No, just let's end it there. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Aisha.
Sir?
Please advise Group 17 couldn't pretend to back down from the court unless your Friday students are accommodating.
Well noted, sir.
So you may just tell Friday that couldn't pretend that the precisely do his own stuff in his own segment. If he allows it, that's fine. You can't come within my own segment. You note Group 17 being not one of the seminar papers presented under me. Because I can only set exam questions based on similar papers presented under my problem. Now I'm here.
But I asked for you several times. I called group 17,
I
group.
can't take 17 again.
I called for you. I called and called.
My network, I was not able to join the class. I'm sorry. You said what? My network, I'm not able to join the class. I'm sorry, sir. Ready to present now? Yes, I'm ready to present.
Sir, he can present now. He within 5 to 6 minutes. Okay, sir.
5 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Group 17, please. Stop your paper and quickly wrap up. Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Llm-Pyo. I'm from Group 17. The title of my paper is Critical Examination of the Role of the General Assembly of the United Nations. The paper is divided into 5 chapters. Chapter 1, Introduction of the General Assembly. Chapter 2, the functions of the United Nations General Assembly. And Chapter 3, Procedures of the United Nations General Assembly. Chapter 4 is the role of the United Nations General Assembly and its procedures. The United Nations General Assembly was created in 1945 in San Francisco, USA, as one of the 6 primary bodies of the United Nations. It serves as the primary deliberative body for policy making and representation. It obtains its authority, make up rules and processes from Chapter 1 Charter. Throughout its years of existence, the United Nations General Assembly has faced examination from numerous diplomats, observers, and academic researchers. The efforts of the United Nations General Assembly have garnered much praise and criticism alike. The United Nations General Assembly was founded under the United Nations Charter in San Francisco on June 26, 1945. Because of time, I'll go straight to the roles of the General Assembly. The United Nations General Assembly is one of the 6 organs of the United Nations General United Nations, which serves as a forum for all member states to discuss and coordinate on international issues. Its role is multifaceted, encompassing deliberation, policy making, and oversight. However, its effectiveness and influence are often debated. One of the roles of General Assembly is representative and inclusive forum. The United Nations General Assembly is the most representative body of the United Nations, with all its 193 member states having equal representation. This inclusivity allows for a broad range of perspectives and voices, particularly from smaller or less powerful nations, which might otherwise be marginalized in global decision making. The second role of the United Nations General Assembly is deliberative and norm-setting role. The UN General Assembly serves as a key platform for discussing global issues, from peace and security to development and human rights. This is a crucial role in setting international norms and standards through resolutions and declarations. The third role of the United Nations General Assembly is the coordination of international efforts. The United Nations General Assembly coordinates international efforts on issues like sustainable development, climate change, and humanitarian aid. It provides a platform for states to collaborate on global challenges and mobilize resources. The fourth role of the United Nations General Assembly is the oversight and accountability role. The UN General Assembly oversees the work of other UN bodies, including the Secretariat and specialized agencies. It approves budgets and sets priorities, providing a degree of accountability within the UN system. The fifth role of the United Nations General Assembly is that it's a forum for diplomacy and conflict resolution. The United Nations General Assembly provides a space for diplomatic engagement, allowing states to address disputes and build consensus. It can serve as a platform for conflict prevention and resolution, particularly through its annual general debates and special sessions. The sixth role of the United Nations General Assembly
is its advocacy for global issues. The United Nations General Assembly amplifies global issues and gives a voice to marginalized groups, including developing countries, women, and indigenous people. It has been instrumental in advancing agendas like the Sustainable Development Goals. The challenges and limitations of the United Nations General Assembly include: one, its politicization. The United Nations General Assembly is often criticized for being highly politicized, with states using it as a platform to advance national interests rather than global welfare. This can lead to a gridlock and undermine its effectiveness. The second challenge and limitation of the United Nations is its inequality among its members. Despite the principle of equality, power imbalances among member states persist. Wealthier and more influential nations often dominate discussions and decision making, either directly or through its alliances with other member states. Another challenge that the United Nations General Assembly has is its bureaucratic inefficiency. The UN General Assembly bureaucratic processes can be slow and cumbersome, hindering its ability to respond quickly to emerging global crises. In conclusion, it plays a pivotal role in the global governance architecture, serving as a forum for dialogue, norm setting, and coordination among the 293 member states. Its achievements, such as the adoption of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the coordination of global responses to crises like HIV/AIDS and climate change, demonstrates its capacity to address pressing global challenges. The United Nations General Assembly inclusivity ensures that even the smallest and least powerful nations have a voice in international affairs, making it a unique platform for fostering multilateralism. However, the United Nations
Is
General
your time
Assembly.
not up? Who's keeping time? Who's keeping time on this?
I've not used all the time to do this, sir.
I am, sir. It's on the last minute, sir. Which second? Can you welcome?
Yeah, so my recommendations are these: to strengthen the United Nations General Assembly's role and address limitations. The following reforms and actions are recommended. One, to enhance decision-making efficiency, to increase accountability and enforcement, to address power imbalances, improve coordination of with other UN bodies, mobilize resources and funding, address politicization, and leverage technology and innovation. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all the seminar papers presented should be sent to the class governor, but I only need to examine and grade the hard copies. So the class governor should link up with us Friday and inform me that I'm done with that formally and officially, so I can enter the class. But for those of you who are in the energy resources course, I will resume from international institutions. I will switch to energy resources class from next Friday. What is being for will talk against something before your exams, and towards like 2 days to the exam, we look at some solar questions for you guys to guide you guys in the revisions. In the meantime, keep reading generally. At the opposite time, we'll guide you to reach particular course. I don't know who they are. Bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And as you instructed, sir, we've sent in the papers to the pigeonhole at the Potter's Lodge, sir.
I will check and confirm.
Yes, sir. I did that this afternoon. Okay, sir. Please, let's put our attendance in the WhatsApp group. You see the list. Please don't forget your number. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Please, I submitted my work this morning. I don't know whether you picked it from the Llm office.
Kene, right?
Yes.
Yes, I picked it up and submitted to before running back to the office.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much.
yes.
Thank you.
Please, please, one submit Professor Ayade Pigeonhole for the rest of the papers. I always advise you submit 2 copies. So for whether you are in the first half that presented under Professor Oke or under the second half that presented under Professor Ayade, print 2 copies of your papers. Put one in Professor Oke's pigeonhole and the other one in Professor Ayade. That's what I did, just so there are no issues when they are marking or whatever, just to be safe.
Okay. Please, can we still submit them tomorrow in their pigeonhole?
It's not
Please
about
feel
those that have
free.
already submitted. Can we make another copy?
If you submitted your hard copy, why are you making another copy? Is it to submit to the second professor?
No, I submitted one to Professor Oke.
I think you should submit another
Pigeonhole.
one to Professor Ayade the next time you're in school. And try as much as possible to go and submit on time, because he collates everything from the pigeonhole, and after a while, when they travel, he's there, it's piled up for a while. So try as much as possible to quickly submit.
Okay.
Just take it to the Potter's Lodge. Tell them where you see their names. You insert it there.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Please, we're almost 40 in this class, and the attendance is still at number 19. Is this attendance I was sent to Rebecca for exams? Please put your name as attendance. Please don't call me later. Don't message me later, please. I'm also exhausted sometimes. Please, just do what we ask you to do now. Please. Please. Thank you.
Madam Aisha. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So where are we supposed to write our names for the attendance? Is it the Zoom, this, or WhatsApp?
I believe it's on the WhatsApp, sir. On the WhatsApp.